In the 6th century, the two most powerful empires on earth, Rome and Persia, went to war through a country most people can't even find on a map. And the kingdom that decided how that war began was in Africa. You were taught Rome, you were taught Persia, you were almost certainly never taught the kingdom that tipped the balance between them. Its name was Axum. Axum sat in the highlands of what's now Ethiopia and Eritrea. By the 500s, it was a heavyweight. It minted its own gold coins, it controlled Red Sea trade, and it traded silk as far away as China. And it was Christian, one of the very first kingdoms on earth to adopt Christianity, sitting right at the edge of the Christian world. Across the Red Sea, in what's now Yemen, sat another kingdom, Himyar, rich, old, and, unusually for the time, ruled by a Jewish dynasty. Two kingdoms, one Christian, one Jewish, facing each other across a narrow strip of sea. And in the 520s, that fragile arrangement broke. The Himyarite king was named Yusuf. History also calls him Du Nuwas. And Yusuf moved hard against the Christians living in his territory. In Najran, his forces massacred the Christians. We know this from stone inscriptions celebrating the killing. And here is where a local atrocity becomes a world event. Because these Christians were connected across the water to Christian Axum, and Axum was connected to the greatest Christian power on earth, the Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople. So the Christian king of Axum, a man named Caleb, did something that reshaped the balance of a continent. Backed by Roman ships, he loaded an army onto boats, and he invaded another continent. Around the year 525, Axum crushed Himyar. Yusuf was killed, and an African Christian power now ruled southern Arabia. Stop and sit with what just happened. Rome and Persia were the two superpowers of the age, locked in a cold war over this entire region. Arabia was the chessboard between them, and the piece that just flipped the board wasn't Rome. It was an African kingdom acting on its own, one that Rome followed into the fight. Axum didn't get dragged into a world war. Axum started the round. But Persia does not lose a chessboard quietly. Decades later, the Himyarites who wanted Axum gone went looking for a sponsor. They asked Rome for help. Rome said no, so they turned to Persia, and Persia said yes. Around the year 570, a Persian expedition sailed south, drove the Axumites out, and turned southern Arabia into a province of the Persian Empire. The African century in Arabia was ending, and that would be the whole story. An obscure war, an African kingdom that briefly ruled Arabia, except for exactly when it all happened and what happened next door. While Axum still held southern Arabia, its governor there was a man named Abraham, and around the year 570, Abraham marched north toward the city of Mecca. His army, by tradition, included a war elephant, and that single detail gave the year its name in Arabian memory, the year of the elephant. Now, here the historical record and sacred tradition meet, and I'm going to keep them clearly apart. What historians and inscriptions tell us: an Aksumite-led army out of Yemen moved on Mecca around 570, and the campaign failed. What Islamic tradition holds, described in a short chapter of the Quran called Al-Fil, the elephant, is that as the army approached, the lead elephant knelt and refused to advance, and the army was destroyed from the sky by flocks of birds carrying stones. The sacred house stood, and here is the detail that turns an obscure war into something staggering. By Islamic tradition, the year of the elephant, that failed march on Mecca, is the year the Prophet Muhammad was born. It became the reference point Arabs dated their entire calendar by before or after the year of the elephant. So follow the thread the whole way. A Jewish king in Yemen moves against Christians. Christian Axum, an African empire, invades across the sea and takes Arabia, with Rome behind it. Persia strikes back and takes it away. And in the final years of that African century, an Aksumite governor marches on Mecca in the year that, by tradition, Islam's prophet is born. One decision, by a kingdom you were never taught, rippled through both superpowers of the age and washed up at the doorstep of one of the largest events in human history. We remember Rome, we remember Persia, we remember what came out of Mecca. We forgot the African empire standing in the middle of all three. And that's not because it was small, it's because of who writes the map. This channel flags what's documented and what's tradition every time. Here, both are worth knowing and neither cancels the other. The Deep Cut. Subscribe.